You know, I've been thinking the other day, it's been almost 2 years since I've done my first lens review, and I'll drink to that. This is great. Speaking of these lens reviews, I had the idea of making this video where I talk about some of the things that I've learned during this endeavor, because it has proven to be quite a valuable experience, and it has taught me a lot about photography, and mostly and most importantly about myself as a photographer. So this is that video. (1664) fantastic white beer, wheat beer. Not usually my favorite, but this is very summery, very flavorful, with a strong citrus aroma. Almost makes me forget the dreary, dark weather outside. Feels like summer in my mouth. Yeah. Let's not ignore the elephant in the room. And by that I mean my hair. Yeah, I decided to let it grow, and it's at that stage now where it defies any logic, any sort of reason. There's no comb, there's no brush, there's no anything that can tame it. It's like it has a mind of its own, and it just only does what it wants. So it is what it is. I've become adjusted and accustomed to it. I usually, during the day at least, at work, I hide it underneath caps, but this is home, so I think I can afford to be a little bit of a caveman. Most importantly, this hobby of mine of collecting, shooting and reviewing vintage lenses, while on the one hand it has cost me quite a bit of money, although in the grand scheme of things these lenses are on the cheaper side. They're not free, they do cost money, and it eventually adds up. A little and a little and a little suddenly turns into a lot. But that is to say that despite the cost, and despite the fact that a lot more, by orders of magnitude, more money has left my pocket than it has entered my pocket, this endeavor has been really valuable for me. Some of the most modest, most unlikely and most unassuming lenses have become my favorites. You know, as they say, my desert island lenses. My favorite lens ever is this, the Konica Hexanon 40mm f1.8. A very soft, wide open, flare prone 40mm from the 80s. My favorite 50 of all time is this modest 70-year-old pre-war design from Carl Zeiss, the Red T variant, the Tessar 50mm f2.8. A tiny little lens, on the slower side as far as 50s go, but it's a joy to use, and it's my favorite 50. Specs really aren't everything. These things here, the lens is not the beer, they're merely tools, and the magic happens with the process. What makes it all worthwhile is what you do with them and how you use them. Now, a bit of an insight into how I approach these reviews is perhaps required here, because while some may just grab a lens, take it out to shoot with it for a couple of hours and call it a review, I like to really go in deep. I mean, once I choose a lens for my next review project, I stick it onto my camera and it's practically glued there for weeks at a time, sometimes even months at a time. I like to dedicate a lot of time to getting to know these lenses. I like to shoot them, and I make a point out of shooting them every time I take a photograph. I mean, no matter the situation, no matter the circumstance, be it street photography, family stuff, close-ups, landscape, color, black and white, I only use said lens. So that's how I develop almost like a relationship with it. It's also really, really liberating, emptying your mind of the temptation of using and or thinking about other lenses and having to only deal with a particular, very specific lens. One can really do a lot with little, and on the one hand, there's a great deal of satisfaction that comes from that, and on the other hand, it's really fun. You can have a great deal of fun with the process of perhaps dealing with, overcoming certain challenges some lenses may face, their optical imperfections and defects. So at the end of the day, it's really a win-win situation. Photography is a craft, and doing these lens reviews and using these lenses has taught me a lot about myself as a, let's say, craftsman, as a photographer. If at the beginning of my journey with vintage lenses, I thought I liked and needed and wanted the most pristine, the most famous, the most wide open, sharp, large aperture, the most desirable, the cleanest, the most technically accurate, the most expensive, the most f1.2s, you know what I mean. If at first I thought I needed all that, I eventually learned some very specific facts about particular things I like and need in my lenses. For instance, I learned that I enjoy and value small lenses, light lenses, easy to use and fun to use lenses. I mentioned this earlier, this Industar 22. It's very fun to use. It's not easy, but it's fun, so that makes it all worthwhile. I mentioned this Konica, the 40mm. That's fun to use, that's easy to use, it makes great images, it's small and light. I think you kind of like start to see why it's my favorite. This Tessar, the size 50mm f2.8, is just a pleasure to handle. It's really smooth, it's really beautiful in all aspects. I also learned that I don't really enjoy using zoom lenses. I'm not entirely sure why, perhaps because of the added complexity. I like to keep things simple. I much prefer zooming with my feet than I do with optics. I mean, I have a single zoom, an 80-200. That gets very little use, and it's there because it's too cheap to sell, and sometimes maybe I need a long lens. But other than that, I only have fixed focal length lenses, and it's what I enjoy using. It's what I prefer using, much more so than any zoom I've tried. use has made me a better, more versatile photographer. Had I not needed to, for the sake of this channel, use this much of a variety of lenses, I probably never would have. Let's take this 85mm. I found it really cheap. It looks like it took quite a few beatings. The glass is pretty scratched, micro scratches, but hey, nothing egregious. It has gone through a proper and professional cleaning, lubrication and adjustment, and since it's been performing like a champion. It's a great piece of glass, but I only got it because it was cheap, like really cheap. I had it for like 30 bucks, 20 bucks CLA, it's 50 bucks. It's really cheap. This goes for as high as $150 on eBay. I got it for a third of the price, but I only got it for a review. I don't really shoot 85mm. This is the Nikkor, the Nippon Kogaku Nikkor H Auto 85mm f1.8, soon to be reviewed here on the channel. So I don't usually need or shoot 85mm. I wouldn't have got it had I not needed it for a review. Much the same with, let's say, the Sigma 24mm reviewed here on the channel. I don't really shoot that wide, but I did for a review. All this having to constantly adapt to various kinds of focal lengths, various kinds of lenses, having to constantly overcome each lens's particular peculiarities, sometimes flaws and defects, has allowed me to become a better photographer, a more versatile photographer, more skillful, and it has at the end of the day given me a lot more confidence in my skills and abilities as a photographer, and eventually and generally speaking, it has made me a much more of a problem solver as I ever was before, because the way, touching upon what I said earlier, the way I shoot these lenses is that I really take them through the paces. I stick to them. I can say I dedicate myself to a particular lens for a particular length of time. So I just kind of force myself to shoot it no matter what, overcome any challenges I might face, and at the end of the day, that has made me much more of a better photographer than I probably would have been otherwise. I'm of the strong belief and conviction that photography can and should be fun. And having access to such a wide variety of lenses has allowed this hobby of mine to always remain fresh. I am pretty much always excited about my next project. I am pretty much always eager to go out shooting. So this has been quite a blessing, having the opportunity to always maintain this really fresh approach and enthusiastic feeling about this hobby has been quite a boon as far as I'm concerned. There's no two ways about it. And the thing with always being eager to go shooting and being so enthusiastic about the craft has allowed me to keep on pushing myself, to keep learning, because being eager to shoot means you go out shooting more, and at the end of the day you learn more, you evolve, and that's really the best you can hope for. I do think that gear is important. It really is. Gear does matter, but perhaps not in the way you might think. On the one hand, you have those lenses that are a pure joy and inspiration. On the other hand, you have those lenses that are not. Some lenses, like some of the ones I mentioned earlier, and certainly many more, are simply beautiful to look at, a joy to use, a pleasure to handle. They just are inspiring. They're pieces of kit that make you want to go out and shoot. Just looking at this lens, although large and heavy, which usually is not exactly my preference, looking at it, feeling the way the focus ring turns, feeling the clicks of the aperture, all this is inspiring. It makes me want to use it. This is how gear matters. It's about the relationship you develop with these tools, the way you approach them, the way they make you feel when in use. On the other hand, there's those lenses like a couple of Russian vintage lenses, yeah, I'm looking at you, that I bought recently, that will probably never ever get a review on this channel because they're frankly just a big pain in the ass. They're loose, they're rattling, they're shaking, they're bumpy, they smell freaking bad, and that's even after a proper CLA. They've been cleaned, they've been lubricated, they've been adjusted, and they still smell like a goddamn tractor engine. Really terrible. I tried, as I did say earlier, I tried to force myself to use one. I won't name names. Actually, heck, I will. There's two Industars that I bought and probably will give away on the channel, sell, I don't know. It's a 61 macro and something 53 f 2.8. The latter is a really small, kind of pretty to look at rangefinder lens, but once in my hand it was just a pain. It was very loose, it didn't feel like it held together. Just bumping it a little, it made the whole framing kind of move. It was just terrible in use. So I eventually gave it all up. I'm not... This is all for fun. As I mentioned earlier, I do this for fun. I do this because I enjoy it. So there's nothing at the end of the day that's making me do these lens reviews. It's not a job. It's not something I get paid for. So I have the freedom to just say no. I mean, not every project is worth finishing. So these two lenses I probably will never use again. They're just terrible in use. I detest them. I mean, I'd rather be doing the dishes. They're just that bad. Kindly allow me to ask you to support my work here. If you find it enjoyable, if you find any value in the content I provide here on the channel, the most important thing you can do to help me is to click that like button. It's by far the most important metric that YouTube uses to push these videos to more potential viewers. If you're so inclined, there's also a Buy Me a Coffee link and a PayPal link down below where you can make a small donation. There's also a subscribe button, so click that and the bell in order to be notified of future uploads. Comment and share your opinion down below, because even if I might not respond to every one of your comments, I assure you I do read all of them, always. The most important thing that I learned while doing these lens reviews is that I don't have enough lenses. Decidedly so, certainly not nearly enough. especially not in our 50s. While I do own 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, I think close to a dozen 50mm lenses, they're not nearly enough. And generally, I don't have enough lenses. My wife may disagree though. This has been Radu. This has been 1,000 words. Thank you for watching. Until next time, I bid you farewell.
Thank you.